The frigate HMS Unicorn was used as a gunpowder store at Woolwich and a drill ship for the Royal Naval Reserve at Dundee, where she arrived on 9th November 1873. The unit was the largest in Scotland, and Unicorn replaced HMS Brilliant as their base. The captain's cabin was right at the stern of the ship and was for his sole use. He would enjoy meals on his own or with invited officers, and the space would have been divided by canvas partitions, providing a day cabin in which to work and a sleeping cabin with a cot. He could furnish his cabin as he pleased, however, he would have to accommodate 4 of the large 18-pounder guns. At the back of the cabin can be found the lighthouse gallery, either side of the quarter galleries. The port side would have housed a toilet, while the starboard would have been fitted out as a shower room. Early simple shower units were installed on ships as far back as the 1780s. The upper deck would originally have been open to the elements in all weathers, and the quarterdeck, or the control centre of the ship, would have run from the stern to the position of the main mast, and it's from here that the captain and his officers would have commanded the ship. Lower ranks would only be permitted in this area if they were undertaking specific duties, such as steering. The wheel and tiller would in turn move the rudder to steer the ship, and the original wheel can still be seen. The central area or waist on such a frigate would have been used to store the ship's boats and spare masts and spars. Forward of the waist is a forecastle, taking its name from the raised fighting platforms found on medieval warships. When not being used to sleep in, the sailors' hammocks would be stored against the side of the ship as added protection against splinters in the event of battle, and also to ensure they were properly aired. Towards the bow, we would have had the ship's bell and sunglasses, like an hourglass to time the changing of the watches. It was in this part of the ship that I once conducted a wedding. A frigate of this size would have had a crew of 300, the captain, around 10 officers and 280 odd ordinary sailors. If you're enjoying this video, then please do subscribe, it's free. Go below, hit the red subscribe button and click the notification bell. You can also hit the thumbs up and leave a like if you wish, or even leave a comment. The gun room is where the 10 commissioned officers would have had their own small cabins and where they would have eaten their meals. They lived in relative comfort compared to the sailors, who had to share the lower decks for sleeping, eating and socialising with little or no privacy. The gun room was sparsely furnished as, during battle, it would also have been used by the ship's surgeon as a sick bay and surgery. The woodwork is stained red in colour so that the blood stains would not be so obvious. At the rear of the gun room is the ship's tiller, which notably is made of iron as opposed to timber, and this was a relatively new development at the time. Unicorn would have had one continuous deck of guns compared to other ships of the line, which would have had 2 or 3. Her main battery had 28 18-pounder long guns, and each gun weighed over 2 tons, requiring a crew of 9 men, firing every 90 seconds at targets of up to 1.5 miles away. The Carronade, short, heavy guns on the upper deck, were developed at the Carron Iron Foundry in Falkirk. They would have fired heavier shot over a shorter distance. The Downton pump pumped water from the hold and expelled it out to port side. At the forward end of the gun deck would have been a small fenced area where livestock would have been kept, supplementing the rations. The crew had 1 hot meal a day cooked on the stove in the gun deck. A gun deck during battle must have been a scary place to be. Each side of the lower deck would have had rows of tables seating 10 to 14 men, who would appoint their own cook, as there was no specialised ship's cook other than a supervisor at the stove. Above the tables would have hung rows of hammocks, all facing stern to bow. Although there was just 1 hot meal per day, meals would have included pork or beef, cheese, butter and ship's biscuits made of flour and water. To drink, they had 8 pints of beer or 2 pints of wine and a quarter pint of rum per sailor. With very little room and no personal space, life on board must have been difficult over 6 months at sea. In what little downtime there was, the men would play games or carve models from wood. The orlop is the lowest deck and is located below the waterline, so called because it overlapped the hold. This deck would have held the ship's gunpowder, stockpiled on racks with the sailors wearing felt shoes to prevent sparks. It would also have stored the ropes, and the hold would have stored all the provisions for the voyage. The Unicorn is full of memorabilia tracking its use over the years, from its time as drill ship, its purpose during World War II, and latterly its time as the Mars training ship for boys in need of a bit of discipline. Just outside the ship, there is a small cabin with a video playing on a loop. I would advise visiting this before going onto the ship and discover, and is a great place to visit. I would thoroughly recommend it. However, accessibility between decks is an issue for anyone with mobility issues.